How my wife Arlene and I met, and our backgrounds, are not particularly important for this story, nor are detailed physical descriptions. Probably all of the background necessary to get a good idea of the relevant information can be summarized in a few paragraphs. At the most relevant time of this story, I, Austin Weston, and my wife Arlene were both 33. We had been married 11 years and had 2 daughters, Justine, 8, and Sybil, 6. Arlene and I are both slightly better looking, taller, smarter, and fitter than average, but no geniuses, actors, or models. Our libidos are also slightly higher than normal, and we have enjoyed a very good sex life, even though not earth-shattering. Arlene was a corporate attorney specializing in negotiating contracts, although also knowledgeable about trusts, wills, and estates. I was and still am the vice president in charge of purchasing, including equipment for a small public company. My sister, Jen, her husband, Bill, and their twin daughters, Kate and Beth, 7, live about 4 miles away by roads, 1 mile as the crow flies, because there is a large park and forest preserve that you have to go around to get there. Our kids and their cousins are best of friends and attend the same school. Although I didn't really know Bill before he started dating Jen and married her 6 months later, he has become my best friend. One idiosyncrasy that Arlene exhibited was her approach to finances and saving money. She insisted on investing in jewelry and art. Gold and platinum jewelry and artwork are investments that you can enjoy while they appreciate, was her common refrain. While I put a little away in the stock market, most of our savings were invested in jewelry, for both her and me, and artwork in the form of paintings and a few sculptures. We also encouraged relatives to give our kids gifts of jewelry and art, and we gave them that type of gift as their big present on birthdays and Christmas, of course also with toys, games, books, and/or clothing. Because of the significant value of our jewelry and art holdings, we had a sophisticated security system that included electrically powered sensors for each of our approximately 12 most valuable paintings and 2 most valuable sculptures. We also had a safe in the floor of the bedroom, and each of us had a locked desk. Arlene had the only key to her desk, I had the only key to mine, and Arlene had a key to the safe with the only other one in our bank safety deposit box. To ensure that power to our sensors and security system never went down, we had a backup generator and a battery backup, double redundancy. Bill has sort of taken a page from our book, but in a slightly different direction. He had high-resolution cameras covering the only 3 entrances to his house and a security system, though it was less sophisticated than ours. Another idiosyncrasy that Arlene had, probably because of her semi-specialty in wills, trusts, and estates, was specifically adding expensive jewelry and artwork to our will shortly after we purchased a piece. All male jewelry gets added to my will with the beneficiary alternating between our daughters Justine and Sybil, should Arlene predecease me, and vice versa with Arlene for female jewelry. For pieces of artwork, we alternated between Arlene and me, who bequeathed them in our wills, again alternating between Justine and Sybil. This had the effect of designating some of our assets as mine, and some as hers, since you can't bequeath something you don't own outright. Life was going along swimmingly, as far as I was concerned, until one Thursday night. When I got home from work, Arlene was there, but the kids weren't. We were having a candlelight dinner, and Arlene had a skimpy outfit on, and gave me a passionate kiss when I came through the door. "Where are Justine and Sybil?" I innocently asked. "Jen and Bill were nice enough to take them tonight, and to school tomorrow. You should have seen how excited they were when I told them they were having a sleepover at Kate and Beth's house," Arlene replied with a diabolical smile. "Whatever will we do without them?" I said playfully, pulling Arlene close to me and giving her a passionate kiss. "We'll think of something," she replied, squeezing my hand. After a tasty, flirtatious, and light dinner, we put on some CDs and danced. We mostly practiced the steps of the slow dance we were learning in a weekend dance class, in our house with our shoes off, for a good hour. Once Arlene started rubbing me on the dance floor, that was the end of that. I carried her upstairs. She stripped me seductively. I stripped her unceremoniously. And we fell into bed. When we were finally done, Arlene rolled off of me and started planting kisses all over my face and neck. "Did you like?" she rhetorically asked. "Does the Pope poop in the woods?" I replied, out of it enough to mix my metaphors and getting a chuckle from the sex goddess who had taken over my wife's body. We soon fell asleep, but Arlene was not done. She woke me in the middle of the night, and soon I was on her again. You're probably wondering why, just before I describe the best sexual encounter in my experience, I said life was going along swimmingly, as far as I was concerned, until one Thursday night. That's because I knew Arlene and thought, what does this mean? More over-the-top sex in the future? Or does she want something? It was with the latter thought that I fell asleep for the second time. The next morning, Friday, Arlene was all lovey-dovey, and I allowed myself to believe that the only thing the fantastic sex we had met was that our sex life had turned a corner from very good to excellent, and more phenomenal sex was in store. My happy-go-lucky attitude and big grin, both mentioned by a number of my colleagues at work on Friday, changed in the early afternoon when the phone rang. "Austin, it's Arlene," my secretary said over the intercom. "Hi, sex goddess," I opened the conversation. "Hi, yourself, Eros," Arlene laughed. "Hey, I'm not Greek," I laughed back. "No, but you sure are the god of lust and sex," she giggled. We continued trading compliments, which devolved into small talk. Then the purpose of her call, "Say, darling," came over the line from her beautiful lips, the preface of a disaster to come. "Some of the people from the office are going out for some food and drink tonight as part of a team-building exercise suggested by the morale consultant I told you about that our corporation recently hired. Are you okay with picking up the kids from daycare and getting dinner tonight? Aren't you even coming home?" I blurted out with pure disappointment in my voice. "Sure, I'll need to change, but I won't have time to pick them up and fix dinner. We're supposed to meet at the restaurant at 6:30. Oh, please be a dear. I don't want to be the only one in our group not to go," she purred. Miffed, I asked, "Why such short notice?" "I think that was part of the exercise, sacrifice for the team. You know that I'd much rather be with you and the kids, but I feel I should do this," she continued, purring even more. What was I supposed to say at that point? After the best sex of my life, she knew damn well that I couldn't be a jerk and say no. I resigned myself to the inevitable. "Sure, honey, we will get to give you a kiss goodbye, won't we?" I asked sweetly. "As long as you don't try to drag me to bed, Eros," she giggled. We said our goodbyes. I sat stunned at my desk. She had never gone out with the guys from work before. As far as I knew, she didn't really like most of them. And I don't remember her ever inviting any of her coworkers to our house. Nor did I remember her ever telling me about a team-building consultant. This smelled like 3-day-old mackerel. My sunny disposition and grin disappeared. I picked the kids up, made them their favorite meal of macaroni and cheese, although I did make them eat a salad too, and we saw Arlene off. We couldn't really kiss her. "Don't mess up my makeup or wrinkle my dress," she tittered as she gave us all light pecks on the cheek. "That dress doesn't look like team-building garb," I mumbled to myself, "unless the exercise is to get screwed." When Arlene came home that night, I noticed the clock. 1:02 a.m. Hardly dinner and a few drinks. I pretended to be asleep to avoid a confrontation. She crawled into bed with, as far as I could tell and confirmed the next morning, some average negligee on, and spooned me. There was no sex Saturday night, but I did get some conventional, for us, sex Sunday and Tuesday nights. I liked it less and less as the next 2 Thursday and Friday nights I got the same treatment. Well, it wasn't that I didn't like the fantastic sex Thursday night when it seemed that her aim was to screw me senseless in positions or manners. Rather, it was what it meant. More team building on Friday night. After the second Friday night outing, she got home at 1:22 a.m., the third 1:51 a.m. The fourth Friday night, I had had it. Despite the fact that she possibly outdid herself Thursday night as far as giving me physical, though not emotional, pleasure was concerned by riding me reverse cowgirl while massaging me. Then, she gave me the best oral pleasure of my life in the middle of the night. As Arlene was getting dressed Friday into a slinky outfit I had never seen before, I was direct. "Arlene, I really don't like this going out on Friday night," I said. "Now, dear, I've already explained the necessity to you several times," she replied while smoothing her dress over her hips, looking intently into the mirror. "I'm sorry, but I can't believe that you get home at 11:30, the time you lied about the previous 3 times. From dinner and a few drinks. I'm very suspicious, and it's killing me." "Now, Austin," she said sternly, "you have no right not to trust me. We've been married for 11 years, for goodness sake, and have 2 kids. What do you think that I'm doing, messing around?" "I don't know, but what I do know is that everything about this smells," I replied. The conversation got more tense as it went on. Finally, after she gave the kids an obligatory kiss on the cheek, I said as she walked out the door, "I'm asking you, no, I'm begging you, for the sake of our marriage, not to go." "Austin," she said exasperated, "I can't cancel now. I'd be the laughingstock of the company. We'll talk tomorrow, and I'll allay all your fears, or even tonight if you wait up." "So you think I'll just put up with this?" I asked in a surly voice. "Darling, you know if we break up that I'll get the kids, the house, and child support. You don't want to destroy your life over ungrounded suspicions, do you?" she asked with a belligerent look on her face. "You're the one destroying the marriage," I snapped. With an exasperated look, she said, "We'll talk tonight, even if I have to wake you up." "We can't talk tonight because I won't be here when you get back in the wee hours of the morning," I barked. "The kids and I are spending the night at Jen and Bill's. Have a nice life," I snapped as I closed the door. I didn't slam it, but it wasn't gentle either. Through the one-way mirror in our front door, I could see Arlene, with a perplexed look on her face, start to reach for the doorknob, but then she shrugged her shoulders and walked out to her car parked in the driveway. As soon as Arlene's car was out of sight, I yelled to the girls, "Let's go to Aunt Jen's house to stay tonight while Mommy is at her meeting." They were ready in about 2 minutes flat, and we got into my car, parked on the street. I had already arranged our sleepover with Jen and Bill, and they knew that something was up. Jen knew because of woman's intuition, and Bill because I had a very vague and basic discussion with him. He's a smart guy, and could fill in the blanks quite well. After the girls were asleep or at least quiet, I went out to my car to retrieve a bottle of pills and returned to the house. The car was parked where the front door security camera, which recorded time and date, would have an excellent view of it. Around 3:30 in the morning, my cell phone rang, waking me up. "Hello," I groggily replied, looking at the alarm clock next to my bed in the guest room. "Austin, where are you?" a frantic voice screamed into my ear. Must be Arlene, I thought to myself. "I'm at Jen's house, like I told you. Why in the world are you calling me at 3:30? I responded in an irritated voice. "Austin, we've been robbed," Arlene cried. "All of our valuable art and jewelry has been stolen." Turning on my iPhone's recording app, I had her repeat it, then asked, "Why didn't you call me as soon as you found out?" "I did," she hysterically cried. "I just got in 15 minutes ago. The house is completely dark, and I had to find my way around with a flashlight." "What are you doing getting home from a team bonding experience at 3:15 in the morning?" "Exactly how are you bonding? You on top or him?" I snarled, trying to be as vindictive as possible. "Well, time. Well, it just kinda got away from me. We can talk about that later. You've got to come home." Her emotional train was now completely off the rails. "Okay, I'll be there as soon as I can. Let me get dressed," I grumbled. I went to the bathroom, got dressed, went out to the car, and drove the 10 or 12 minutes it takes to get there. Arlene's makeup was smeared all over her face, having been dissolved by copious amounts of tears when she met me at the front door, flashlight in hand. She started to approach me with her arms open and say something, but I held her off with my outstretched arm and harshly cut her off. "Did you check the circuit breaker, team builder?" "No, I don't know where that is," she cried. "Get out of my way," I shouted, quickly moving past her while shining a flashlight of my own. As I passed her, I asked, "Did you call 911? "No," she sheepishly responded. "Well, what in the world are you waiting for?" I snapped. I saw her getting her cell phone out of her purse as I blasted past her. I went to the basement and found the main circuit breaker in the off position. I also found the backup generator switch off and the battery backup disconnected. The phone line, to which the security system was connected to the outside world, was unplugged. I turned the switches on and reconnected the battery and phone line. Everything was working perfectly because alarms indicating the theft of multiple pieces of art were ringing. I turned the security system off by punching in the code of the console by the front door. I answered the phone call from the security company, gave the password, and told them that it was a false alarm. I started reviewing everything on the first and second floors as Arlene dissolved into a puddle of tears on the couch in the living room. "Greet the cops at the door when they get here, and get your head out of your bum," I yelled at her with a real edge to my voice. Sure enough, not only was all of Arlene's and my jewelry and art taken, except for one really heavy granite sculpture, but so were the kids' valuable possessions. Even the secure safe in the floor of the master bedroom was open and empty. When the cops arrived, I gave them my statement first while a female police officer was trying to get Arlene to calm down. I told one male officer about my wife's call to me, what she told me over the phone, and what was missing. I produced a list from my study of all our valuables. Meanwhile, 2 other male cops were sweeping the house in case someone was still there. I hadn't even thought of that. Finally, Arlene calmed down enough to give her statement to the female cop. While she was doing that, I pulled the cop I had been talking with aside and whispered, "I really think you should check out my wife for this theft. She's the only one with the key to the safe that was open, except one in our safety deposit box, which I'm sure you can confirm is still there. And she and I have been having marital problems. I wouldn't be surprised if you found something incriminating on her computer or in her locked desk." The cop looked at me funny, but wrote it down. "What kind of problems?" he asked. "I believe that she's been seeing some other guy the last 4 Friday nights. I get a private detective's report tomorrow. When I told her our marriage was in trouble if she went out tonight, she did it anyway. I think that she wants to ditch me and doesn't want to split our wealth when she takes off," I said as earnestly as possible. "She would really do that? With 2 kids?" he asked. "She'd assumed that she could take the kids with her," I replied. "She almost admitted it last night. I have it recorded on my iPhone," I groaned. "You say that you're getting the PI report tomorrow, Sunday?" he asked. "No, sorry. I keep thinking of this as Friday because I'm not normally awakened at 3:30 a.m. I get the report around noon. Today, Saturday," I replied. "Can you bring me a copy at the station when you get it?" he asked. "I certainly will. I'll probably be by about 1 o'clock, 1:30, I replied. "Great. Ask for Officer Smithson. I'll bring a robbery detective up to speed." After the cops left, I went back to Jen's house without even talking to Arlene. I didn't even bother to answer her as she called out, "Where are you going?" as I went out the door. After a nice breakfast at Jen's house, where I brought her and Bill up to speed, I brought the kids home. I told them that a bunch of our stuff was temporarily missing, but I was sure that we'd get it back. They were sad and crying when they went to their rooms and found some of their favorite stuff missing. Arlene, still looking like hell, and I did our best to comfort the kids. "I have some errands to run," I told them, "but we'll be back by about 2 o'clock or 2:30 at the latest. Want to go to the park then?" I asked, smiling as widely as possible. That turned their tears to smiles. I got hugs from them, and as I was getting ready to leave, Arlene came up to me and asked, "Where are you going?" With a cold stare, I said, "Probably to get proof of your infidelity. then quickly exited without looking back. The photos of Arlene and her sex buddy, Jack Trailer was his name, from her second and third Friday nights out were exactly what I had imagined, although the exact location surprised me a little. The PI said he might have trouble getting photos usable as evidence of them in the act if they only did it indoors. They were foolish enough to do it on the deck of, and in, his swimming pool, easily seen from many vantage points where they could not expect privacy. Also in his report was the fact that they arrived at Trailer's house after dinner on Friday night, and they apparently left in Arlene's car a little before 11 p.m. The PI didn't follow them, but they did get back around 2:15 a.m. Then she left alone about 3 a.m. I went to Kinko's, made 3 copies of everything except the DVD, then went to see Officer Smithson. I got there, and he immediately introduced me to Detective June Grayson, a robbery detective who was as good-looking as the women cops on TV, one that I didn't think existed in real life. She was not only attractive but smart. After reviewing my evidence without me prompting her, Grayson said, "Looks like your wife and this Trailer guy were out at the time of your burglary. Your security system computer indicated that all systems were turned off at 11:05 p.m. Just to cover all my bases, where were you then?" "I was at my sister's house," I nonchalantly replied. "Can anyone there vouch for that?" she asked. "I don't think so," I responded. "I think that they were all asleep, but you can ask them." Then I got a eureka look on my face and said, "Wait, I think that Bill, my brother-in-law, has security cameras, and at some point, I went in my car to get some pills I have forgotten. Maybe that will give you a timeline." "Can we get the tape from your brother-in-law?" Grayson inquired. I laughed. "I think that Bill is high-tech. I'll bet it's a DVD," I said as I pulled out my cell phone and dialed Jen's house. Bill answered. "Say, Bill, do you have security camera tapes from your house for last night?" I laughed again at his response. "Is it possible for you to bring the DVD? Sorry to insult you by asking for a tape, to Detective Grayson at the local precinct. I'll let her tell you why when you drop it off. I've got to take the kids to the park. Thanks." I smiled at Grayson and Smithson. Just as I thought. He's high-tech and has a DVD. He said that he'd bring it right over. Unless you have something else real important to ask, I've got to go take the kids to the park. "Thanks, Mr. Weston," Grayson said with a smile, standing up to shake my hand. "We'll let you know in the next few days if we need anything else." "I'll be around," I said, smiling back and shaking her and Smithson's hands. "I know you know what you're doing, but as I told Officer Smithson last night, you need access to Arlene's computer and desk drawers. I'd love it if you got a warrant for those, and my computer and desk too, to cover your bases." Grayson just grinned. I dropped the original of my evidence, including the only copy of the DVD of Arlene and Trailer, at my lawyer's office. He always works on Saturday. I just told him to put it in his safe for now. I brought the other 2 copies home and put one in my desk and left the other one without the report of Friday night on the coffee table in the living room. I took the kids to the park, and Arlene insisted on going with us. She tried to talk to me when the kids were playing, but every time she did, I simply ignored her and went over to the kids, pushing them on the swing, starting playing tag with them, or doing something similar. I made dinner that night and asked the kids to help so that I didn't have to be alone with Arlene. After dinner, I played games with them, read them bedtime stories, and finally had to leave them. When I went downstairs, Arlene had the envelope I left on the coffee table in her hands. She was white as a ghost. "Austin, we really need to talk," she said, her voice crackling. "Why?" I asked with a dramatic, confused look. "Will talking make you unscrew Trailer?" I grabbed my car keys and left as she yelled, "You know that this is a no-fault state, and I'll get the kids if you divorce me. We can work this out." My only response was to flip her the bird. When I got back 4 hours later, I went straight to the guest room, propped a chair against the doorknob, and went to sleep. Sunday was probably the most uncomfortable day of my life. It's really hard to ignore someone in the same room with you for several hours, but unless the kids were there, I never responded to anything she had to say. Sunday night, after the kids were in bed, I was watching TV when she came up to me with an insurance claim form. "I need you to sign this so that I can fax it to the insurance company to get reimbursement for our stolen property." I looked at it, got a pen and paper, wrote down the fax number and department of the insurance company, then said the only words without the kids present I spoke to her all day. "I'm not signing it, and if you forge my signature, I'll have you arrested for fraud." As Arlene screamed at me, I continued watching TV. When her noise was too loud, I got out the headphones, plugged them into the TV, and ignored her. She eventually left, crying. I saw her go to the fax machine and send out the claim form. After she went to bed, I wrote a letter and faxed it to the same address she sent the form to. My letter read, "While at the present time I do not have any definitive proof, I suspect that my wife is responsible for the burglary and loss that she reported to you in a claim form earlier tonight. I am not making any claim until the police investigation is complete. And if anyone submits a document with my signature before then, you can be sure that it is a forgery. Call me on my cell phone, XXXXXXXX, if you have questions." Monday night at dinner, Detective Grayson and 4 other cops showed up with a warrant. I had the kids go outside on our deck to finish their meal, telling them, "The police just want to get your stuff back." They were happy with that, especially since I told them that they could have a soft drink on the deck, something we almost never allow them to have. When they found Arlene's desk drawers locked, Grayson asked, "Who has a key for this?" "I have the only one," Arlene nervously replied. "I need you to open it," Grayson ordered. "Why?" Arlene asked. "Because the warrant says we can look in it, and I don't want to ruin your furniture." Arlene went to her purse, got her keys, and unlocked the drawers. The procedure was repeated for my desk. Arlene was frantic when they took her computer, while I was calm when they took mine. She was hysterical when she saw them pull an envelope from a storage rental facility from her desk. "What is that?" she screamed. "I've never seen that before." "I thought that you have the only key," Grayson deadpanned. "I do. Someone must have picked the lock." "Easy to determine. We'll take the drawer with the lock cylinder with us and have our techs evaluate it," Grayson nonchalantly replied. Obviously, that was not the response Arlene wanted, but that was what was going to happen. When the cops left, Arlene was frantic. "Why are they doing that? What does the warrant say?" she agonized. I handed her the warrant and said, "Maybe they think that the theft was an inside job." She looked shocked as I turned and went out on the deck with the kids. Tuesday was a really bad day for Arlene. Her only highlight was driving the kids to school. About 11 a.m., she was served at work with divorce papers, citing adultery. At 2 p.m., Detective Grayson and 2 other cops arrived to arrest her for theft and escorted her out of her office in cuffs. Tuesday morning, Detective Grayson had called me to come to a storage facility about 10 minutes from our house to identify our stolen property. It took me about 30 seconds to identify it as ours. Then I went through it all and found that, except for my Rolex watch and a set of gold cufflinks, everything was there. Detective Grayson called me after the arrest to let me know what happened so that I wouldn't be left wondering and so that I could pick up the kids. Arlene appeared before a magistrate late that afternoon and was granted $50,000 bail. She called me. "Austin, I'm calling you from jail. Please don't hang up," Arlene begged. "I didn't know that adultery was illegal. Why are you in jail, Arlene?" I sarcastically asked, already knowing the answer. "They think that I robbed our house. It's ridiculous," she cried. "I don't think it's ridiculous. Didn't you do it because you were planning on leaving me?" I gleefully asked. No, that's absurd. We can talk about it later. Can you come down to bail me out? If we both agree to use the house as collateral, I can be free in an hour. Please, Austin. Why don't you call your lover trailer? I'm sure that he can help, I snapped just before I hung up, as she started screaming no. My attorney filed for an emergency protective order on Wednesday morning while Arlene was still in jail. Either she didn't call Trailer or he wouldn't help. I didn't care which it was. My attorney asked the court for the order of protection, saying that Arlene was charged with stealing my property and that of the children, so she shouldn't be allowed in the house. The judge wouldn't hear the case until Arlene got out on bail. Apparently, she got her parents to post it, and on Thursday was freed, with instructions to go straight to the family law court for a hearing on the order of protection. Arlene's attorney argued that she should have the presumption of innocence on the theft charges and had never physically harmed any family member or even threatened it. My attorney argued that the two most expensive items of my jewelry were missing, and she could be presumed to steal other things. The judge's ruling sort of split the difference. We do have to recognize the presumption of innocence. However, Mr. Weston still has a right to feel that his property is secure. Therefore, Mrs. Weston may return to the marital home while the divorce proceedings progress. However, she may not return until Saturday. In the meantime, Mr. Weston can have any room of the house locked with a new lock that Mrs. Weston does not have a key to, and she is prohibited from ever entering that room. Notify the court of the room by Monday. Anything else? I prodded my attorney for another stipulation. Your Honor, my client would like to be sure that Mr. Trailer, the individual with whom Mrs. Weston is having an affair, be precluded from entering the Weston home or having any contact with the Weston children until the divorce proceedings are final. I won't bring him there or with the children, Arlene yelled, jumping up from her chair, perplexing her attorney and the judge. Mrs. Weston has agreed that she won't, so that should satisfy you, Mr. Weston, the judge said. I wanted to yell. I can't believe anything that lying woman says, but fortunately restrained myself. I had Lowe's put in a new door to the master bedroom and reinforced the surrounding frame. I also had a sophisticated lock installed in it, one that was almost impossible to pick. I moved all of Arlene's clothes to the guest room. Arlene did come home Saturday morning. The kids were glad to see her. I basically ignored her, except for interacting when necessary for the care of the children, and so as to upset the children the least possible. Arlene wanted to talk. I told her, Sunday night after the kids go to bed. We talked in the den with the door closed, so if there were raised voices, it wouldn't wake the kids. After sitting in silence for a couple of awkward minutes, I said, Arlene, you're the one who wanted to talk. Talk. Austin, I can't help but think that you're behind this theft. She started out before I cut her off. Whoa, the first words I wanted out of your mouth were, I'm so sorry for cheating on you, Austin, and for hurting you so badly and destroying our marriage. I guess you don't feel it though, do you? I said sarcastically. Austin, once you calm down, we can talk about rekindling our love and dismiss this talk of divorce. But first, I have to get out of my legal problem. Arlene, let me make this so clear that even someone as egotistical and self-centered as you can understand. There is no talk of divorce. I'm divorcing you, plain and simple. We're done, I said as forcefully as possible. But Austin, she started to plead. I again shut her down. The only way that this talk will be productive is if you listen to and accept my proposal, I said even more forcefully. Are you ready to listen? She nodded her head. I will change the grounds of divorce to irreconcilable differences. I will get sole custody of the children, but you will have unlimited visitation, alternate major holidays, and 2 weeks in the summer as long as you do not expose them to any other man, unless you are married to him. Our assets will be split 50-50. You will pay child support for one child, and you will pay 1/2 toward the mortgage on the house. Once Sybil reaches 19, we will sell the house and split the proceeds. There will be no alimony either way, I said, boring a hole through her head with my stare. But, she started again, and I again cut her off. I'm not finished. If you agree to this, I'll go to the DA and beg her to plead you down to a misdemeanor with no jail time. If you plead, no contest. That way you'll be able to keep your law license and your job. Deal? I concluded. But I didn't do anything, she said, crying and wringing her hands. I know you orchestrated this whole thing to get back at me. I don't want a divorce. But if there is to be one, there is no way in the world that I'll agree to you having sole custody, she wailed through her tears. So you won't take responsibility for anything? Breaking up the marriage or the theft? Huh, I said, raising my voice as I stood up. And you're not even the least bit remorseful, are you? Like I should be happy to be your backup plan. God, how could I ever have married you in the first place? I moaned. As she buried her face in her hands, I said, take this deal, Arlene. If you don't, you'll be ruined. As I walked out the door, she yelled, but if you just listen to me, I'd explain everything. You have to listen. At least that's what I think, she said. But before she'd finished, I'd closed the den door and can't be sure. 2 days later, when I arrived home, the kids weren't there, but sitting in my family room were Arlene and Jack Traylor. What in the world is he doing here? I screamed at Arlene. You told the court you wouldn't bring him here. Austin, you have to listen to what the two of us have to say. After you listen, he'll leave and never see you again, she whined. Get out, Traylor, I bellowed. He stood up with a hybrid nasty and pleading look. He was about 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier than I was. But the old saying about it's the size of the fight in the dog, not the size of the dog in the fight, is something I believe in. I had never backed down from a confrontation in my life, even though it got me my butt kicked several times, and this was not going to be the first. Traylor was trying to say something to me as he slowly approached, but I didn't hear what it was because I kept repeating, at the top of my lungs, get out. After yelling my refrain a good 24 times, it was clear that he was not going to comply. So I walked toward the phone and picked up the receiver to call 911. He pulled the phone cord out of the wall and in an irritated voice said, will you just listen, darn it. I pulled out my cell phone and started dialing 911. He grabbed it out of my hand and threw it down on the floor, breaking it as he said, it will only take 2 minutes and will give you your life back. I turned to go out the garage door, through the kitchen. He grabbed my suit jacket, but I squirmed out of it and bolted for the garage. Apparently, he didn't see me pick up the meat tenderizing mallet from the kitchen counter. As I turned left and exited the kitchen to a small breezeway to the garage, I came to an abrupt halt and turned around. As soon as he made the same left turn into the breezeway, I hit him in the forehead with the mallet, sending him reeling backward against the kitchen sink. As he was screaming and holding his hands up to his head in an attempt to stop the bleeding, I kicked him once in the groin with everything I had. By now, Arlene was in the kitchen sobbing. I saw her purse on the kitchen table, pulled her cell phone out of it, and dialed 911. My emergency is that an uninvited interloper attacked me in my own home, and I hit him in the forehead with a mallet. He needs an ambulance, and I need the police to arrest him. I opened the front door and calmly sat at the kitchen table as Arlene attended to Traylor. The paramedics impressed me. They were there in less than 5 minutes. The police were only a minute behind them. Traylor was taken away restrained in an ambulance. The police believed my story. I asked them to take my broken cell phone with them, to check it for fingerprints to confirm my story, and the phone line if they needed it. Also, my suit jacket had been ripped in the process, and I asked them to take that for evidence too. All that Arlene could tell the police, something she repeated over and over through her tears, was, we just wanted to talk to him. The next day, my attorney was in court again. The judge was furious and ordered Arlene to vacate the house within 2 days and to pay for changing the locks. Visitation with her kids would have to wait until after the divorce proceedings were concluded. The judge continued the divorce until the criminal case against Arlene was finalized. I talked Detective Grayson into getting a search warrant for Traylor's car and house and Arlene's car. In Traylor's car, they found my gold cufflinks, and in Arlene's trunk, They found a present with Jack and a heart on a tag. Inside the present was my Rolex watch. Trailer was arrested for theft, too, in view of the cufflinks, and because when fingerprint results from my house came back, the only fingerprints on the basement window with which the thief gained access to my house were his. Arlene didn't follow my advice and accept my proposal, but fought the criminal case. Apparently, she believed, rightly so as it turned out, that the only way that she could get custody of the kids was to win the criminal trial. The prosecution had a great case, a woman with a gaudy emerald ring and blonde hair, both just like Arlene's, rented the storage facility where the stolen property was found shortly after Arlene's first team building exercise. Only Arlene's prints were found on the lock at the storage facility. That, along with the evidence earlier discussed, made a nice prima facie case for the prosecution. Arlene and Trailer took the stand in their defense. Arlene admitted to 4 sexual encounters with Trailer, but maintained that she never left his house until 3 a.m. the last Friday, so the PI's testimony was fabricated. She maintained that I must have stolen the stuff and set her up. She couldn't explain how I could do that since she admitted that she didn't think that I had a key to the safe or her desk drawer, and her keys were always in her possession. She explained the storage facility rental as a case of mistaken identity. She said her fingerprints were planted on the lock. Both Trailer and Arlene came off as belligerent and unconcerned about the effect of her cheating on her family. I was grilled by defense counsel for 3 hours. The prosecutor and Detective Grayson said that I did very well. They said that I came out as strong but cooperative and very credible. After my cross-examination, the prosecution put on Detective Grayson to explain that there was no way that I could have committed the theft. She said the DVD at Jen and Bill's house showed me entering there at 11:02 p.m., not leaving, and my car not leaving yet. The break-in occurred, as indicated by the alarm system being deactivated at 11:05. In a dozen tests, the fastest that any patrolman had been able to get to my house from Jen and Bill's at that time of night was 9 minutes and 32 seconds. Detective Grayson also testified that I did not have a key to the safe. The only 2 were the one Arlene had in her purse and the one in the safe deposit box. She testified that I had not even visited the safe deposit box for more than 3 months before the first team building session. An expert confirmed that Bill's DVD was recording the time accurately, as was my alarm system. Once the case went to the jury, Arlene and Trailer sensed that things were not going to go their way and tried to make a deal with the prosecutor for misdemeanors, just what I suggested to Arlene. Arlene even agreed to give me sole custody of the kids. The prosecutor asked for my opinion. I told her, "You're in charge," but after she put us through the expense and trouble of a trial, if it were up to me, I'd let the jury decide. That's what she did. The jury came back with a verdict in less than 2 hours. They were found guilty on all counts, including theft and insurance fraud for Arlene and theft and assault for Trailer. Arlene was sentenced to 3 years in jail and probation for 5 years, and the Bar Association started disbarment proceedings against her since she had been convicted of a felony. Since Trailer had 2 misdemeanor convictions in his background, and since the assault against me was a special circumstance because it was in my home, he got 4 years in jail and probation for 5 years, and was ordered to pay restitution for my cell phone and suit jacket. After the criminal trial, the divorce was a slam dunk. All of Arlene's pleas, through her attorney since she was in jail, fell on deaf ears. The marriage was dissolved based on adultery. I got full custody of the kids, paid up child support for 3 years and more when Arlene got out of prison, and the house. The rest of our assets, before Arlene's criminal defense costs, were split 50-50. She was ordered to pay my attorney's fees. As my brother-in-law and best friend, Bill, and I walked out of the courtroom, he had a big smile on his face. "What's with the grin?" I asked. "How did you do it, Austin? You can tell me now," he expectantly replied. "Do what?" I laughed. "What I wouldn't tell Bill, but will tell you, is that of course I set up the entire theft thing. I was very suspicious of the team building lie the first time I heard it. I confirmed that it was a lie by having a coworker call HR at Arlene's office. If HR never heard of it, I concluded that it was bogus. The first Friday night of the team building, I had already hired a local high school senior as a babysitter. She came over as soon as Arlene left. I paid her $50 for sitting, and $100 to never tell anyone that she did sit that night. Arlene's cell phone gives out a signal that an app on my smartphone picks up, and I made sure that it was working before she left that Friday night. As soon as the sitter arrived, I tracked Arlene down using that app. I found her and a guy I had never seen at a restaurant that I had never even heard of. I went in with a disguise on, cornered a busboy, and gave him $100 to bring me a glass that Arlene's date had handled and drank from. I waited until Arlene and her date exited the restaurant. I saw them kiss before she got in his car. Still in the disguise, I walked in back of the car and photographed the license plate with my cell phone. By Monday afternoon, I knew that Arlene's date was Jack Traylor and where he lived. I hired a private eye to follow Arlene the second and third Fridays, and it is then that he got the photos of them together by his pool. I told the PI that I did not want his report so I could claim that I had no actual proof until then, until the day after her fourth Friday team building session. I had a plan in place, including how to get custody of the kids if we divorced, by Sunday night. The first Monday, before I left for work, I removed Arlene's distinctive emerald ring from her jewelry box. She never wore it to work, but did whenever she went out. I paid an actress who was the same size as Arlene, and who wore a wig with the same color and style of hair as Arlene and sported her emerald ring on her finger, to rent a storage facility cube in Arlene's name, paying 3 months cash in advance. By Tuesday, I had purchased some key impressioning clay. While Arlene was sleeping that night, I snuck her keys out of her purse and got impressions of her house safe and house desk keys. The next day, I got home from work early and using alloy slug, a cheap metal that melts and then solidifies quickly, made copies of those keys. Wearing gloves, I laid out a new padlock that night and asked Arlene if she had ever seen it or the key for it. She picked them both up, looked at them, and said, "No, I don't think so." "Why?" "If you don't have another use for it, I want to use it to lock my toolbox." "Okay," I replied. "Sure," she responded and walked away. I put the lock in a plastic bag, hoping that her fingerprints would remain on it, and the key. 2 days before the theft, with reflectors, I marked obstacles in a path through the woods between my house and Jen's. The day before the theft, I opened up her desk drawer and put the storage facility envelope with the code for getting into the facility front door and the key with her fingerprints on it. I had another made for me at a hardware store. I had the same actress who rented the facility for me rent a van with a motorcycle rack on the back and had her boyfriend rent me a dirt bike. I parked the dirt bike in a clump of trees behind Jen and Bill's house. I also got the password for Arlene's laptop from the list of passwords in her locked desk, set up a new email account, and left a draft email in the account allegedly for Jack Traylor. The email said that she couldn't wait to get together with him, and if their plan worked, they would be able to live off of my stolen property while she got a divorce. I paid the actress and her boyfriend to be on call the fourth Friday night of the team building sessions, to walk from the side of Traylor's house, and using the extra key for Arlene's car, drive it away. Before doing that, I had the boyfriend ready to open up Traylor's car using a car lockout tool and drop my gold cufflinks between the passenger side door and seat. I had also placed a wrapped box with Jack on the tag and my Rolex watch inside in the trunk of Arlene's car. Earlier that day, I had parked the rented van in my garage and disabled the automatic garage door opener. 2 days earlier, I had placed Traylor's fingerprints from the glass at the restaurant onto the basement window that would allow access. I found that to be much simpler than I imagined it would be. Instructions on the internet, obtained via a library computer, not mine. Cocoa powder, a shallow bowl, and a small paintbrush were all that I needed, plus a little patience. I apparently did a good enough job to fool the cops. Up until my talk with Arlene. begging her not to go out the fourth Friday. I had not decided to actually pull everything off. I honestly believe that if she had stayed home that night and pulled the plug on her relationship with Trailer, we had at least a 50-50 chance of making it, although I would have gotten revenge on him somehow. When she not only went but gave me the comment about her getting the kids if I tried to divorce her, my love for her instantly evaporated, and I set the plan in motion. The only assistance that Bill provided, unknowingly, was to, a few weeks before the theft, answer my questions about the only part of his house that the cameras did not pick up, namely, a particular basement window that had fake metal bars on it. I had already received a communication from the actress that she and her boyfriend had left Trailer's house before 11 p.m. Trailer had left several windows in his car open since it was a hot night, so her boyfriend did not even have to break into the car to leave the cufflinks. By the time that I had returned to Bill's house from my car at 11:02, I had already opened the hidden basement window. I quickly exited, ran to the dirt bike, cut through the woods at over 40 miles per hour, knowing that the reflectors would warn me of obstacles, and got to the basement window of my house that I had earlier disabled the alarm for and planted Trailer's fingerprints on. Using gloves for everything, I first pulled out the phone line, then detached the battery, then turned off the backup generator, then turned off the main power switch. I used the key I had made from Arlene's to open the safe. Since I knew where everything was and the van was in the garage, despite working in the dark, I cleaned everything out in less than an hour. I drove to the storage facility, loaded everything into the rented cube there, and put the lock with Arlene's fingerprints on it on the latch. That took only a little more than an hour. I returned the van to the rental place, left it in the lot, and put the keys in the drop box. I caught a cab and had it drop me off a block from my house. I rode the dirt bike back to Bill's house, picking up reflectors as I went. I hid the dirt bike in the clump of trees and climbed back into his house through the same window I had exited and reattached the fake metal bars. Having Trailer come to my house and do what he did was an unexpected bonus. I never did find out what motivated Arlene to have the affair with Trailer, nor anything else about it. I guess if I had ever listened to her or him when they were anxious to talk with me, I would have found out. However, once she spurned me when I gave her the last clear chance, I didn't really care. I got my revenge. Now they can live with it. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.